Welcome to another wonderful episode of Glad You Asked. We're at what? Episode 20?
20.
We're flowing through these,
That's
John
a milestone,
Lopez.
if you
Flowing
ask
through
me.
these, John Lopez.
Who are you?
I am Jeff Henderson, footwear designer.
Much more than a footwear designer, Jeff is the master of the pen tool on the on the trackpad.
I don't need all those other fancy tools you guys use. Who are
I'm
you,
John
good sir?
Lopez,
John
New
Lopez.
York City-based sports photographer.
Sports photographer. Sports photographer and junkie of every little gadget you could ever imagine. Though he can't get his phone to always work, he's got 48 plugs to kind of work to go with it.
True and true. Guilty as charged.
All good, all good.
So what are we going to work on today, Jeff?
Today we're going to work on a tool that's actually called, so John is always yelling at me, let's make sure we use the right name. It's called Free Distort. Free Distort. So I'm going to walk you through a project that I had a couple months back. It's actually online now, and I'm going to show you actually some graphics for a company that does some t-shirts, some other gear. And so we'll walk you through a little bit of the process to get to the Free Distort tool. So I'll start you with, they asked for something that actually said, he wanted the shirt to say show and prove. So I actually start with I always go into my layers. I have a bottom layer where I actually put the t-shirts I just grab off Google, get some nice clean imagery so I can work with, so it looks a little bit photorealistic, so people are like, oh, okay, I get it. So I always start with, all right, the words just to make it basic, and then I have a bunch of ideas. So you can see I take some graphics that I know would look good, but I also know that would be difficult to use in screen printing, but I'm playing with it off Peep Show. I go to another font based on Banksy. Let's see what else I got here. There was actually not. Oh, there it was. Takes a while. My computer's waking up. Did a little 3D graphic going on there. I wasn't so much a fan of that. But I show all of these to the client just so we can kind of see what he might like. Because I'm not sure where he's headed. A little Smith & Wesson playing off of that logo. And I don't even know where I got that from. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. So, but here's the one he actually liked. This was when I was a kid. I was a big comic book fan. Luke Cage, Netflix is all on, but I know where Power Man and Iron Fist come from because I actually have these comic books back in the day. And so I was like, yo, what if I did show and prove based on that? So this is actually what I created. Now, to actually get that to work, the one thing that you actually had to know how to do to get that font to work is the Free Distort tool. Now, I'm pretty much guaranteeing that back in the day when this was made, there was no Photoshop or Illustrator. So they were doing these by hand. So they just probably laid out, figured out how to get those views to work. The way you actually make that work is you find a point way down here, you draw the lines to get there, and then you actually draw from there.
Is that called the line of perspective?
Line of perspective. See, I went to engineering school, John. I don't know the real words. That's why he's yelling at me, because I teach them. So the real thing you should learn from me is actually go to school so you know how to do it the right way. Merely, I'm making it up as I go along. So I'm going to show you. I was even calling it the offset and slant, but that's not what we were doing. So here, I actually take the graphic. I find the font that I want to use, and I'll line it up so it fits perfectly and evenly. Look at that magic. It's not like I came in here and did this before because I didn't do my homework. Yes, I did. Just so you know, people, I do my homework. I may not know what it's called, but I do my homework. And so I'm going to take the show, which is actually a font. I'm going to create outlines. And then I'm actually going to go up here in Effect, Free Distort, and it gives me a box. And you can see this box. I've already played with it before. It starts out, I'll hit reset so it gets there. But I'll actually take this out. And really, I'm just eyeballing of what I see that angle to be. Keeping that line pretty even. I hit OK. Bam. Now, the reality is it still shows the old line. So I can go back and revert if I want to. But if I want to keep that as is, or let's go back and do this one as well. So, and you know what? I don't know if I can do Free Distort with the actual font. Can I do that? It actually does it. I don't actually want that, so I'm going to back up. Let's do the Free Distort.
Is Free Distort only found under the Effect menu? Or is that where you always find it?
That's all. I always find it.
Okay.
Because you get illustration effects and Photoshop effects, yes, so it is there. So I know I want to do the reverse to the prove. Again, just sort of lining it up.
And you just, like you said, you're just eyeballing this.
I'm just eyeballing it now because I kind of want to see, is that going to give me what I need? And the reality is that John Lopez is 99% of the work, just getting it to be there. The rest is offset tools. We go over those offset tools later, but that kind of gets you what you need to build around. Once you get there, home free, just make that. The one thing I will say about this, which is annoying now, is that see these drops here, these little breaks when I actually built that? That's not actually in the logo. It's more like a block at the bottom.
Oh,
That will
that's right.
forever bother me now whenever I see that, because that is not just something that I created on my screen and it goes away. You work with people who know what they're doing. It's actually for sale. So stop by Vandalay, buy the shirt, support the people. But that now, I will forever go, that's not how it looks. That's just going to bother me for the rest of my life. That's just how it is.
Because the logo isn't actually like
It's
that.
not actually like that. So people are like, oh, it was inspired by it. I go, yeah, but I blew it. Like, I didn't see that one thing. And the reality is, I don't do graphic design a lot for people. Those guys like, yo, you do some cool stuff. Can you knock this one out right quick? So I did. But I knocked it out so quick, I forgot to get that one little detail that, again, will bother me for the rest of my life. So
how might you go about doing it? Is it something as simple as, can you just use the direct selection tool and kind of move some points down and all of a sudden it's a straight line?
I would probably cheat myself and just say, let's delete all these lines. Knowing that it's a flat line there, I take that one out.
Ooh.
Let me, oops, cancel. Let me lock what's going on there. And then I go to same with these. Again, knowing that it's a flat line at the bottom. Oops.
So your pen tool is showing you a minus key. Is that just delete point?
That is taking out the point. So what you get is, in here you get the pen tool. You can have a regular pen tool. You can add points. So let's say I want to add a point in here because I want to move things in there. So it's there. I can now play with that. I can subtract points, and I can use the anchor point tool, so where I can go in and if it's flat, I can actually create curves. I can actually make it so if I pull on the handles.
Man, this is why they say the pen tool is mightier than the sword.
I don't know if they actually said that, but John Lopez does know more than me because he went to fancy college. And so you can clean that up. So it would have taken me all of like 3 minutes to make this file more accurate, and yet it's too late now because my man went through all the work to make it a real shirt. So
I kind of like it like this, though. So let me ask you one more thing. So now I noticed that you have yellow color on the text, and then you just use a black stroke. And then did you create a rectangle shape for the outside and then give that a blue fill and a black stroke and then kind of make it proportionate to the letters?
Yo, you asked a lot of deep questions here, John Lopez. So what I have here is that's actually the stroke. And it depends on what weight I'm going for or what details I need. You can see here, going to my stroke tool, that this is actually, let's see, am I linked to something? I'm grouped with something. So let me see what else I'm working with here. Oh, and I move some things around. I don't want to lose that. And now I'll ungroup it. So what I get here is that blue is really just the blue border. And then I took the same line, and let's make a copy of this, and built the outside until I got to a thickness I was happy with. Now, one of the things that I did do is that, for the sake of putting it on the shirt, what you get here is my thicknesses are slightly different because what you get here in the perfect Power Man and Iron Fist, and let me turn that up a little bit so you can see the real deal. I think I turned the opacity down, actually, because, you know, I'm using my layers correctly here. I had it all the way down to 17, so it was harder to see, so I could work over it. Is that these layers get, or these points are a little thin, which is fine for a comic book, but when you want to read it from far away, when it's, say, on a shirt, I want it to be extra thick, slightly thicker. So now you can read it, as opposed to if they were too thin, the black lines in here would sort of wash out. I also added the border here, which I did on purpose. Like if you look at the actual one, there's no border up here, but it would look a little strange. And for people who don't recognize that it's Power Man and Iron Fist, they might be a little thrown off, like, it looks kind of broken. Right. This, I wish I had done the right way. This, I'm happy I have the border there. So, and again, this is all like my own perspective, my own judgment. I'm not right. I'm not wrong. I'm usually right.
So speaking of perspective, can you just show us one more time how you got to that tool? What was it called again?
Which one are we looking at? Which tool are we looking at?
The show and prove. The way you got the show and prove to be in this perspective.
I use the effect. I'm going down to distort and transform. It's free distort.
Okay.
So.
And does that work for other shapes as well, or does that only work for text?
It works for... No, it definitely works for other shapes. I mean, to be honest, I didn't even know I could do it with a text right now. So shout out to you for making me do that. Free distort. I can do kind of whatever I want with it. So
Nice.
You get to play with it. So it's a nice tool. Comes in handy when you need to play with some certain dimensions, get some perspective, or even if you just want to wrap things around other things. And at some point, we'll show text. I really don't do a lot with graphic design. We'll probably invite some amazing graphic designer on here one day to show you how to do these things that I just faked, and they'll tell me I'm doing it all wrong. But that's okay, because I don't do graphic design that much, so it's not going to kill me.
Oh, and this is important stuff because a lot of times somebody might use that free distort tool for something completely different, and you might just open up them. I mean, you just blew my mind for sure with how easy it is. You know, I mean, I could go into Photoshop and show you about a dozen different ways to try to achieve a similar effect, but that was super quick, super easy, and it's in vector, which is a huge deal because you can now scale this up to be on a billboard or scale it down tiny to be on a business card.
That's interesting because you always bring things up in the fact that it's doing in vector. Like, I think there's two kinds of people who grew up in Photoshop and people who grew up in Illustrator. I grew up in Illustrator, so I automatically by default think I'm supposed to do everything in Illustrator. So it never occurs to me to do anything that I would do in Photoshop until I have a project, which I'll show you later, where I have one client, he expects everything in Photoshop. I don't really use Photoshop, so I have a lot of cheats that I use to sort of like, I'll use some masking tools and I'll just throw some things and I'll potato head some pictures together. And he's like, oh, can you shave this off and make this color? I was like, I can't really do that in like Illustrator in like 1 minute. Where someone else will be like, and they're done. So, I mean, the reality is, I think what's better about these conversations is I'm learning what some of the powers that I have in Illustrator, but also learning, oh, I could probably go in Photoshop and do that like in 30 seconds. It's just a matter of where do I actually have Photoshop on here? I have to look for it, but I'll get back with you later because that's not something I use a lot. So.
That's right. That's
Very
right.
cool.
Well, hey, this has been another episode of Glad You Asked. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions for the brilliant mind that is Jeff Henderson, the one and only, hit us up at yo@GladYouAsked.today. Also, don't be shy. Follow us on Instagram at GladYouAsked.today. Double tap some of our pics. Holler at us. Comment. We're always on there, so you can feel free to ask your questions through Instagram as well, or just comment. Show us some love. Show us some troll, whatever you need.
Takes a lot of energy to hate. Takes a lot of energy to hate.
Yeah, you know, whatever works for you and suits you. But again, email us at yo@GladYouAsked.today. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
All right. How do I turn this off? Command Shift 2.